From 60% to 95% order visibility, how we rebuilt a logistics platform. Welcome back. Today's topic is from 60% to 95% order visibility, how we rebuilt a logistics platform. We'll cover what you actually need to know about supply chain visibility software. Now, moving on to why the first build failed. Before we wrote a line of code, we ran a 5-day diagnostic. What we found wasn't a technology problem. The previous vendor had used capable tools. The failure was governance. Decisions were made in Slack. Scope changes happened verbally. There was no approval trail, no structured handoff between sprints, and no client checkpoint before major features shipped. When something broke in production, nobody could trace which decision caused it or who had approved it. This pattern is consistent with what we've written about before. 67% of digital transformations miss deadlines due to governance failures, not technology failures. The logistics platform rebuild was a textbook example. The client knew the tech stack they wanted. They didn't know how to govern the people building it. Next up, let's talk about the blueprint sprint, 5 days before any development. Q Services developed the 5-day blueprint sprint as a scoping methodology that produces a signed-off technical and delivery specification before any development begins. On this project, it was the first thing we ran. The blueprint sprint works like this. On the logistics platform, the blueprint sprint surfaced a critical finding: the client's ERP was not sending order status events in real time. It was batching them every 4 hours. That single latency issue was responsible for most of the 60% visibility problem. Without the blueprint sprint, we might have built a beautiful front-end dashboard fed by data that was already 4 hours stale. Now, how we applied HITL governance to every delivery gate. Human-in-the-loop governance is a delivery methodology where human approval is required at every critical decision point in the development process. In AI-augmented software delivery, this means no AI-generated output goes into production without a named human reviewer signing off on it. For this project, we structured 4 hard approval gates. Before any infrastructure was provisioned on Azure, the complete architecture went through a client review session. This included the Azure SignalR integration for real-time event streaming, the API gateway configuration, and the Dynamics 365 webhook setup that would replace the 4-hour batch cycle. The client's CTO signed the architecture document. Let's talk about moving on to the technical rebuild, what actually changed. Once governance was in place, the technical work was straightforward. The hardest part was already done. We knew exactly what we were building, why, and who was accountable for each piece. The core fix was replacing the 4-hour batch cycle with real-time webhooks from Dynamics 365. When an order status changed in the ERP, it now triggered an event immediately. We used Azure Service Bus as the message broker and Azure Functions to process incoming events and update the visibility database. For the front-end dashboard, we used Azure SignalR to push status updates to browser clients without polling. Customers and warehouse staff now see order status changes within seconds of them happening in the ERP. If you want to understand the technical implementation pattern, our post on building real-time delivery tracking with Azure Maps and SignalR covers the architecture in detail. Let's talk about next up, what the governance framework looks like in practice. A software delivery governance framework sounds abstract until you see the actual artifacts it produces. Here's what we created and maintained throughout this project. Every decision made during development was logged in a structured format. This structure means that when a regulator, auditor, or internal reviewer asks, "Why did you choose Azure Service Bus over RabbitMQ?" there's a document that answers the question with full context. The governance gap in AI companies is almost always this: ethics statements without delivery artifacts. We produce the artifacts. Next up, let's talk about results, the 60% to 95% jump in numbers. The project delivered on time. Q Services maintains a 98.5% on-time delivery rate across 500-plus projects using HITL governance, and this engagement held to that standard. Here's what changed. The 35 percentage point jump in visibility came from a combination of the real-time event streaming fix, better data mapping between ERP status codes and the customer-facing terminology, and the anomaly detection layer flagging orders that had silently stalled in transit. Next up, moving on to what an AI governance framework includes for logistics projects. Based on this engagement in 500+ prior projects, a complete AI governance framework for software delivery in logistics, supply chain, or any regulated sector must include. Supply chain visibility software operates at the intersection of real-time data, operational decisions, and customer-facing commitments. A status error doesn't just affect a dashboard. It affects whether a warehouse ships a replacement, whether a customer calls to complain, and whether a freight carrier is held accountable for a delay that didn't happen. That operational sensitivity is why governance matters more in this space than in, say, a marketing analytics tool. The consequences of a bad AI output are measured in missed deliveries, not in incorrect A/B test conclusions. Human oversight in AI systems that touch logistics operations is not a compliance checkbox. It's risk management. Let's talk about moving on to conclusion. Supply chain visibility software built without governance is a liability dressed up as a feature. The 60% visibility rate this client lived with for 2 years wasn't a technology failure. It was a delivery failure, caused by a previous engagement that had no structured scoping, no human approval gates, and no audit trail. The rebuild succeeded because we fixed the governance before we fixed the code. The blueprint sprint produced a signed scope. The HITL approval gates ensured no AI-generated output entered production without human review. The immutable audit trail gave the client something they'd never had before, a complete record of why every decision was made. If your logistics or supply chain platform is underperforming, and you've already tried the technology answer, the honest diagnosis is probably governance. Would recommend starting with a blueprint sprint. 5 days of structured scoping has consistently prevented months of expensive rework. Reach out to the Q Services team to discuss what that looks like for your specific platform.